No, I was always very gung-ho about it, like 100%. Bluegrass, banjo. I was just into it.
Greetings, everybody. It's Keith Billick here with the Picky Fingers podcast. I am coming to you from my famous backyard suburban Detroit recording studio, also known as underneath a pop-up tent in my backyard. So, as if my soothing voice is not enough for you, perhaps the added traffic sounds of 8 Mile Road will bring that little extra comfort and serenity to your day. Either way, I'm really happy to have you tuning in. And before we get started, just a little news from Picky Fingers HQ. I hope to see some of you down at IBMA in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's the last week of September. As I have been doing the last couple years, I will have an exhibit hall booth along with my good pal Daniel Patrick of the Mandolins and Beer podcast. Come say hi, come buy a t-shirt, come pick a tune. I'll have my banjo there, of course. And it's always good to put some names with faces and to meet some new listeners, meet some old listeners. IBMA, look me up. I'll also be teaching at the Great Lakes Music Camp alongside Bill Evans and Evie Layden, some podcast alumni there. So that's always a great time. Head over to greatlakesmusic.org to check out how to sign up for that one. Speaking of buying t-shirts, if you are hearing this right when it comes out, you have approximately 48 hours left of the 23% off clearance sale at banjopodcast.com. That's on all official Picky Fingers merch. And, so that's the t-shirts, the stickers, the audio tracks of the theme music with banjo tablature. All you have to do is put summer23 into the coupon code and you'll get 23% off your order. That's now until the end of August. But being a clearance sale, that does also mean that I will be restocking merch very soon. So if you don't see something you want, maybe check back in a few weeks. And I'm expecting more of that. As always, it's time to thank our VIP, very important picker of the show. Today, that's Stephen B. Register Jr. Stephen has generously signed up on the Patreon site to throw me a few dollars a month to keep this banjo podcast going, and it is very generous and very appreciated. So, Stephen Register Jr., thank you so much for your support. Everyone else, head over to patreon.com/banjopodcast. That's how you become a VIP supporter of the show. You get some great rewards in return, along with the satisfaction of knowing that you are helping spread the banjo awareness worldwide. You can also contact me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast.com with all of your questions, complaints, concerns. Today's featured guest is Casey Henry. Casey is well known for her educational resources as I guess I'll call her the heir to the Murphy Method throne. So she's been involved in that almost literally her whole life. But she's also played professionally with such bands as Uncle Earl, the Dixie Bee Liners. She's released a solo album and recorded an album with her brother Chris Henry under Casey and Chris and the Two Stringers. So she's a fantastic, mostly Scruggs-style player and has some great perspectives on how to properly learn that style and lots of other insight based on her many years of playing and teaching. And of course, she is the daughter of Murphy Henry, who you heard from a few episodes ago. So this was once again recorded in the Murphy Method compound, where they very graciously welcomed me in. So I appreciated that, and I appreciate you listening. And how about we put our hands together and give a warm Picky Fingers welcome to Casey Henry.
The part of my story that people are probably familiar with is that my parents play bluegrass, Red and Murphy Henry, of course, and my mom is the banjo player there. So bluegrass was always around, right? When my brother and I were little, I heard it in utero, so it definitely was there from the very beginning. So the sounds were always, sinking into my brain.
You had that direct resonator to belly connection.
Exactly. Right into my developing, nervous system. So I'm sure that probably had something to do with it.
Yeah, for better or worse. Yeah.
and the stuff was always around the house. The instruments, they were just around. Now we, as kids, weren't around when my parents were actually playing gigs, because of course you don't take your kids to work with you. You're not going to take your kid, Yeah,
you can't watch them when you're performing. Right.
Exactly. So we were at babysitters, so we didn't actually see the thing happening. But my parents had picking parties, and it was kind of around. And my mom always went off to teach banjo lessons. Mm-hmm. So I remember her being gone to do that. So I wasn't I do know that I'd learned my banjo rolls when I was 5. Maybe. I think competition has always been a big motivator for me. And apparently, I remember reading this in one of Murphy's columns. I don't remember this with my brain, but she was starting another little kid on banjo who was, small, maybe my age.
Similar age, yeah.
Yeah. And apparently I saw that and then wanted to do it, So, but I didn't get any further than forward, backward, square maybe. I don't even know. But so it was in there a little bit. And, the next musical thing that I did, I played a little ukulele when I was little because that's just so easy and fun.
Yeah.
And around.
The non-intimidating instrument. Maybe.
Yeah. It was just so, and they have them in fun colors or whatever.
Right.
And then I took piano lessons in school so that I did get a bit of music reading foundation. And then in middle school, I joined the school band. So I played flute and piccolo. All that was still I only lasted a couple years in piano lessons. I didn't like my teacher that much, and so I was big. I was a band nerd basically through high school, but I didn't start playing. So the first bluegrass instrument was really bass, and I think that was because my brother actually was taking up mandolin, I guess. So he had this bluegrass thing, and my parents always were really. They never made us, play music or learn any instruments. It was never mandated. But whenever we showed the slightest bit of interest in anything music related, they would drop everything they were doing and show us what we wanted right that second. So it was very encouraged. So he was doing mandolin so that he had this thing that he could do with them that got him attention from my parents, And
is Chris a younger brother?
He's 3 years younger.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so. I wasn't sure.
And so I was like, oh man, I need something that I can do to be a part of this thing. I guess. And bass was not taken. Okay, so it's kind of easy. It's like Missy Raines said one time, there's only 4 strings and they're huge.
Right.
So it's easy in that respect. If you have a decent sense of rhythm and can kind of hear your chord changes, it actually is pretty easy to pick up. And nobody in my family played it. Of course, my mom was playing banjo. My dad was either mandolin or guitar, depending on who else they had playing with them. And so bass was not taken.
Yeah.
So when I was about 12, I started out on bass. And eventually my brother and I got proficient enough on our instruments that we could be the band for, the Red and Murphy band, at which point the name changed to Red and Murphy and Their Excellent Children, a name which we're never going to live down, ever.
Well, it's better than what other adjectives they might have used for you. So, just
True. So I was really playing bass, as the bass player in their band before I ever took up banjo, seriously. So I would say 14, I started being the bass player with the band. And then it wasn't until I was 15 that I started playing banjo seriously. So, even as a bass player, we were going to festivals, we were playing, and it still wasn't really that interested in banjo specifically until we went to Spigma.
Okay.
It was the first time I'd ever been to Spigma, which is a pretty overwhelming experience. Walking into the lobby of the Sheraton, it's sound, coming at you from everywhere. So the Murphy Method had a booth in the exhibit hall, so we were kind of there. And at some point during the weekend, I was making the rounds, looking at the booths, and Little Roy Lewis was in the Stelling booth, and he was playing. You know, he was doing his
thing.
He was doing his thing, maybe playing with Jeff, like maybe they were playing banjos or something. And everybody was like gathered around, you know, watching. Because how can you not watch Little Roy Lewis when he's doing his thing, right? And I was like, wow, that's really cool, you know, that he's getting a lot of attention. I want that much attention. You don't get that much attention as a bass player.
Right.
Unnamed bass player being the, you know, it's a cliche for a reason.
Yeah. You stand in the back. Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, oh, so for whatever reason, it was at that moment that I describe it as my banjo switch turned on. You know, like it was just right then. And I said, okay, I'm going to play the banjo. And so I went back home and dug out the, Beginning Banjo Volume 1, which was on VHS at that time. It popped in the VHS. And at some point I had acquired Banjo in the Hollow, I think, and Cripple Creek, maybe, or at a slightly earlier age. When I had attempted it earlier, I got as far. So the Murphy method starts with Banjo in the Hollow, Cripple Creek, and then initially the third song was Cumberland Gap. And the first time I started to learn banjo, I got as far as Cumberland Gap. And you know where you have to stick out your little finger? I was like, oh, that's too hard. And I quit. So I have a lot of sympathy for my students who, when they get to the high break for Cumberland Gap, who complain that it's hard, because it is hard to get your little finger to behave. You know, that's not a thing that little fingers are used to doing, sticking way out like that. A little bit of a stretch, Exactly. So I have tons of sympathy for that because I had already quit once over it. Mm-hmm. But at age 15, I was ready, and I just blazed through everything that was on VHS at the time and went back and got the stuff off cassette that hadn't made it to video at the time. So this would have been early 90s. I was in 10th grade. So like 92, 93. I got basically everything that was available on the instructional materials at the time. And then Murphy, we didn't sit down for many lessons really, but it was the thing where like she would come home from teaching or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, listen to these 2 songs that I learned today. And I didn't realize until, you know, later on being a teacher myself, how extraordinary that is. Not to sound full of myself, but like to have a student like absorb that much material that quickly and actually be able to play 2 songs that they learned in one day, you know?
Yeah, it's often you're on the one song for weeks, maybe.
Yeah, you know, a song a month is usually what I just, you know, and once you get into the harder stuff, it can be way more than that per song.
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand until I had a student do that myself, and I saw it coming back to me, and he would go off for a week and have like 3 or 4 songs that he learned. I'm like, wow, now I know what my mom was talking about, how it was just so wild to have somebody do that.
Yeah, that's great. Let me back you up to the Little Roy thing. You said part of your attraction to it was how much attention you saw him getting, you know, the crowd gathered around, and anybody who knows how he performs, you know why he attracts that. He's very flamboyant in a way, I guess is the word I'll use. You don't strike me as being like an overly flamboyant person. You don't seem to do this out of a need for like attention or compliments or whatever. So I'm wondering if that was really it, or if there was just something else that clicked for you about hearing him play. Or
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, certainly a lot of it is just a love for the sound of bluegrass and banjo specifically. Bass wasn't really fulfilling me either musically or, you know, attention-wise or whatever. Yeah. Or maybe I just, you know, wanted to be able to play a lead instrument. That, you know, bass is such a supporting role in bluegrass especially. But, you know, when I was a bass player, I mean, not that I'm not still a bass player. I do still play bass from time to time. But when that was all I was doing, I didn't listen to bluegrass, right? Like I was around it. It was happening, but I didn't listen to it and didn't try and learn from it. I didn't pay attention to other bass players and to see what they were doing. Right. You know, as soon as I started playing banjo, I was listening to it all the time.
The radar
I was right in front of the stage looking at Sonny Osborne's fingers or Rob McCreary, or, you know, just like staring at their fingers for the whole set. Yeah. Whereas when I was playing bass, I didn't really pay attention to other bass players.
Just do the thing.
Yeah, I just do it. Yeah.
That's interesting. Was there any element of a lot of people tried, especially at the age that we're talking about, are rebelling against what their parents do. And it seems like that's when you swung greater, more strongly toward it. How did that work out? And was there any consternation that you had about doing that? Or were you sheepish about like, okay, I'm into the banjo now. All right, now let's have it.
No, I was always very gung-ho about it, like 100%. I didn't really go through a rebellious stage. A lot of that is just my personality. I'm pretty low-key. But also my parents weren't very prescriptive about what they required us to be doing, right? They were kind of, not laissez-faire, but just kind of supportive in whatever path we wanted to go on, as long as it, I guess, wasn't destructive or whatever. And I'm just not a very destructive person, Right, so my path was pretty straight and narrow, just anyway. So yeah, it didn't feel like a capitulation to say, oh, okay, I'm going to play bluegrass now. I was just like, bluegrass, banjo. I was I was just into it.
So you said you started having your ears up to anyone who was in front of you that was doing it. Who especially caught your ear that maybe influenced you in the early days?
Well, obviously the person who's playing I heard the most was my mom. So I play most like her. I listened, studied Earl the most. As far as just, of course, I didn't see him in person for years and years and years. But, he wasn't playing at that time.
Right.
I wasn't that drawn to Flatt & Scruggs' recorded material early on, but I had a couple tapes of some live shows, and that stuff I just wore out.
What do you think the difference was?
It's got to be the live versus studio. I mean, it's not like they weren't playing live in the studio, but probably just something about how the band was clicking in front of an audience, or even like a bunch of them were radio broadcasts. So just, it's something about how they were presenting the energy of the music for, going out over the airwaves or whatever. More off the cuff, probably, than what they had done in the studio. It was just a lot more lively than their studio stuff, I felt. Later on, I got more into the studio recordings, but the live stuff was really what I dug, back then. As far as other people that I listened to a lot, I listened to Rob McCurry a lot. I listened to Larry Perkins, who I just adore. It wasn't a huge variety of people, mostly just, the traditional, older style traditional players, I would say. Jim Mills.
Was there a certain point that you felt like you started doing things that you maybe could identify as your own, rather than just stealing things from Murphy or stealing things from wherever they might have been coming from?
I did start writing tunes fairly early, so I think it was pretty gradual. And pretty early on, I had that concept of just playing whatever, because the song doesn't stop even if you have screwed up, So, from having, played bass in the band already, that was just like, you just keep going no matter what, right?
Yeah, it's especially important for that, yeah.
So I feel like I pulled in a lot of stuff that way that just, I wouldn't have planned out to play otherwise. It just, out of desperation, because you just have to play something. So I feel like that arose naturally as my own stuff that just garbled out when I was.
Is there an example that you can think of that, of something that you came up with accidentally, or that maybe started as a mistake? Or
this was 30 years ago. No.
Fair enough. So you said you played mostly like Murphy. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What do you consider to be her style as opposed to maybe someone else, Rob McCurry or Larry Perkins or someone like that?
Well, she's, very much just Earl Scruggs with a side of Ralph Stanley, right? It has that Stanley kind of edge a lot of times. And like the stuff that I expanded, back then maybe that she didn't do was I did learn some melodic tunes. Like we had a melodic, the Murphy Method had what was called the melodic banjo series at the time of cassette tapes. Yeah. And although she did the teaching, my uncle John Hedgecoth did the playing on those, because she doesn't do melodic. She's not interested in melodic at all. So you heard her voice explaining it, but it was John doing the picking on it. So I actually learned most of those. Okay. So I did, expand a bit on what I had gotten from her. like Rob does a lot of playing in D at a D position, which Murphy doesn't do that much. And I tried to do more playing without a capo, like just a C or D or even E or F. I dig F, without a capo, which took a while to develop because those are pretty hard for a beginning banjo player. But Murphy didn't do that very much at all back then. I think she does more now because she's heard me do it for so long.
But that's something that she's maybe getting from you,
yeah,
as opposed to vice versa. Well, given that we have the audience that we do, mostly banjo players, let's dive into that. Like, what do you think helped you find an approach to play in E or F or D, open without a capo? Like, what are some things that people should try if that's something that they're having trouble with?
So I definitely started with C position because that's of all the positions that are not playing out of open G, C is the next easiest.
Yeah.
Right, because C is your home base there. So you're working with C and F and G, which is open. So you've got at least one open, some open licks and rolls that you can do. So I think I had some tunes in C. The singing songs are usually pretty easy, like I Saw the Light or whatever. So definitely upper intermediate type level, but doable.
Yeah.
I've taught it to people who can do it. And then when I was trying to figure out D, I mentally just tried to move up C 2 frets. So initially I took everything that I did in C and just pretended like my index finger was the nut, right? I made it do all of the job that the nut was doing. So initially I would have played exactly what I played in C. I don't know what I would have done here, probably. Or to make it match C, exactly. Yeah. So that'll get you pretty far if you can make that mental shift.
And I guess we should also make a quick note that you also spiked your high string to A, so it's not pure open D, but yeah, you made that accommodation to be more friendly.
That is good to point out. Absolutely. I remember I asked Rob one time how he had gotten so good at playing an open D, and he said, "You just have to do it."
That's very, very Rob of him.
Know it. It's so true and so unhelpful to somebody who's trying to learn how to do it. It's almost so just like Zen in its wisdom. You do it, you learn to do it by doing it, which it's true. It's true. So it took me. I did that for a while, and then it took me longer to realize that when you're in D, you have your 4 chord is open. Now your G, you can use the G rolls as a 4, so you don't have to you use your F shape position for your 4 chord anymore. You have, and then you also have the 2nd fret open for your 5 chord. So those are aspects I think of as more specific to D position rather than as derivative from moving C shape up 2 frets.
Yeah.
As far as other keys like E, I specifically remember in high school, my first band that I was like the banjo player with, I had the family band where I was still the bass player. But it was a local band around here called the Singing Cops. It was a gospel band. We played in churches and whatever. So I was the banjo player with them, and we were at some practice. We were practice one week, and my capo was not in my case, so I was capo-less, and we did some stuff in E or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, E, what? So I just basically did the same thing I did for C, except I took D and moved it up, but you don't have your open D string anymore. Like
Sure.
everything is closed.
Yeah.
So just like
closing in around you. Yeah.
So I'm sure I was extremely awkward. And then, you got to send your fifth string up another 2 frets. And then to get a low note, you have to go all the way down to actual E chord down here. So it probably was super awkward. But again, I approached it the same way, like taking what I would have played in D and just scooting up 2 frets. And now you have to have everything covered.
Yeah.
So as far as, that's was my mental approach. Just keep on scooting it up and get your fingers to do the jobs that otherwise would have been done by the capo or the nut.
So these days, when you do have a perfectly working capo available, is that something that you'll still try to do to maybe achieve an effect or that you're comfortable with? Like what is your approach?
It's more situational these days. Like it depends on the song. If I want it to sound a certain way, or if I know that I am going to want to like have a drone open sound, I'll be more likely to play it open. But I almost never capo to C. Mm-hmm. Whereas I did that a lot when I was learning. B, sure. A, yes. But if it's E or if it's F, I'm almost always likely to play it open. The only it all depends on the feel of the song, right?
Sure.
If you want to have it more driving, like I'm gonna more likely choose a capoed or less open position to give it more punchy and less droney, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So where did you go from there? You were playing with the cops. What did you?
The singing cops.
The singing cops. You went to college around here, but then you moved to Nashville. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to the University of Virginia, where I double majored in English and women's studies. I didn't find that much bluegrass in Charlottesville, really. I did play in 3 local bands over the course of my college years, but they weren't local to Charlottesville, where the college was. Like they were Virginia bands, but I had to like drive to get to the practices or whatever. Yeah. So after I graduated, I came back home for a summer when I recorded my banjo album, which is called Real Women Drive Trucks. Like my goal was always to move to Nashville, but I wanted to get my album done first.
Yeah.
So I got that done, moved to Nashville, 2001. This was 2001. And there, I knew that I would have to earn the money in order to stay there. So I got a job at a restaurant, Chibo restaurant, which was right in downtown Nashville.
Okay.
Working, the owner was a woman named Sylvia Harrelson, who was a great singer, friend of Kathy Chiavala, who is how I got the job.
Interesting.
And Sylvia sings like Patsy Cline. Like she's a great, cool. Big country voice.
Nice.
So that was awesome. And also I started working at Terry Comer's dentist office down in Franklin, which was also a bluegrass connection because Sally Jones worked there before I did. Sandra Block worked there before Sally did. So he just kind of kept handing the job down.
Wow. Okay.
And then Patty Mitchell worked there after I did. So I actually ended up working there. He's known as the bluegrass dentist. I'm talking like everybody would have heard of him, but of course not. So he is a guitar player, singer. Yeah, no, he was great to work for because, of course, he understood the musician aspect. Whenever I needed time off to go wherever, he was like, fine. Yeah. And so I kept that as a day job basically the whole time I was in Nashville. I taught lessons, the whole time that I was in Nashville as well. worked for a variety of bands. Was with Tim Graves and Cherokee for a very short time as bass player. Uncle Earl played banjo for them before they went full old time. So I was prior to Abigail Washburn.
I saw you play up in Lansing at the Hole in One. That was my hometown. And I'm not from Virginia. That's like a big deal when someone who plays banjo comes in town. So I saw you with that. I can vouch.
Let's see. I played, of course, with the Dixie Bee Liners for a couple of years. And my brother and I also had a band for a couple of years called Casey and Chris and the Two Stringers.
Going back to old Virginia, I'm going back to my home. Going back to the valley, and I never won't roam. In despair, I met my darling, for me she was the only one.
So that was our own band. And then I had the opportunity to do some really cool stuff, like play a few gigs on bass with June Carter Cash.
Oh, wow.
Which was pretty awesome. Played an Americana Music Awards show with her. And Johnny Cash was on that show too. It was like the award show, entertainment. Wow. I feel like I played some other bass gig with her too. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. And then I played a few things with Michael Martin Murphey. Just that was a right place, right time kind of thing. So I got to play on the Opry with him. Yeah. My one and only Opry appearance.
And that was a banjo gig?
It was.
Oh, great.
Pat Flynn, who I played some banjo stuff with, was like Michael Martin Murphey's musical director, band, who like assembled the band and all the players and everything. So he got me that gig, for which I'm grateful.
Cool.
Yeah, that was really fun. So I kind of did all that over the years that I was there. And then when I had my first kid, I was like, I need to be closer to my parents because free babysitting, so I moved back
Not
here
for
to
everybody,
Winchester.
just for you. We just put that out there.
Exactly. So I moved back here to Winchester 11 years ago now, 11 and a half years ago. And since then, I've just been teaching because you don't have to travel. I can do it right out of my house. And that works out really well.
In terms of closing the door on the Nashville experience, what would you say what were like some lessons that you learned in terms of like what it takes to be like that kind of professional caliber player who gets those interesting gigs and maybe gets into playing in some of those bands?
Well, you have to be really good. I mean, like you have to be able to cut the gig. I probably should have practiced more than I did. You have to be out and about in the music community. As soon as I moved there, every night was at the Station Inn. Just it's about hanging out, it's having fun, but also making connections, meeting people so that people know that you're around in town. You have to have multiple income streams.
Yeah,
right?
Sounds like it.
Like in case, because you're not always going to have a steady run of gigs necessarily. So, with the day job, teaching, eventually I developed the, selling individual video lessons.
That was when you were still in Nashville that you did that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a more recent development.
It's been 2009 I started doing that. Okay. And that actually came out about kind of organically because I had a guy who was taking lessons from me who drove over from Memphis, which is like a 4-hour drive.
Yeah, that's...
So he did that a few times, but he was like, I don't really want to drive this far. Can you just record the lesson and send it to me? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I can. So I recorded, I think it was Shucking the Corn or Shenandoah Breakdown or something. And so I recorded it and edited it together so it wasn't all choppy and sent it to him. And then I'm like, I've got this lesson now. I could just sell it to other people too.
Yeah.
So that is kind of how it just started. I was like, oh, I can do this one song at a time and that works.
Yeah.
So that just grew from there. I mean, now I've got 450 songs maybe, on my website that you can just order on a single song basis.
Now, is that under the Murphy Method umbrella or is it?
Kind of. I mean, it's definitely, taught by ear in the Murphy Method style. It's not on the Murphy Method branded site. It's on my site. But,
got it.
But it's all, I also run the Murphy Method site. So it's a
blurry line.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey folks, Keith here, just taking a quick break from the episode, but I'll be right back with the rest of it. I did just want to mention that if you are looking to have your dream banjo built, or if you just need some of the top quality components to add to a project or an existing banjo, I couldn't recommend anyone more than Sullivan Banjos. Sullivan has been one of the top names in the banjo industry for decades. And Eric Sullivan down in Alabama brings all that experience and adds his personal, customized touch to make sure that you are getting the banjo of your dreams. Whether you are looking for a tried and true traditional design, or if you want to get a bit more imaginative, chances are if you can dream it, Eric can build it. I know that's true because I've been playing my own Sullivan custom banjo since 2004. So give Eric Sullivan at Sullivan Banjos a call at 502-365-5022. Visit them on the web at sullivanbanjo.com or email at sullivanbanjo@gmail.com. Now, once you have that Sullivan Banjo in your hands, the best way to learn it that I recommend is with Peghead Nation's online streaming video courses. You can learn bluegrass, old time, and many other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in all of roots music. Check out some of these banjo classes that they offer. Beginning Banjo with Bill Evans, Bluegrass Banjo with Bill Evans, Clawhammer Banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward Style Banjo with Bruce Molsky, The Banjo According to Danny Barnes, and Contemporary Bluegrass Banjo with Wes Corbett. All of these courses are going to include high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tablature, play-along tracks, and plenty of songs to play along with. Now, the best part is that just for being a Picky Fingers listener, you are going to get your first month free. Just go to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers, all one word, all lowercase, at checkout. Once again, pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers to get your first month free. And folks, another sponsor of the show and one of my favorite places on earth is Elderly Instruments up in Lansing, Michigan. Now, I worked there for about 10 years, and it's still where I go for all my banjo, guitar, and any other string instrument needs. So that should really tell you something. Elderly has been family-owned since 1972 and has grown to become the world's most trusted source for new, used, and vintage fretted instruments. So whether you are looking for your first beginner instrument or that hard-to-find vintage collectible, Elderly is going to have that, and they are also going to back it up with the best customer service in the business. So head over to elderly.com to see their full inventory online. They ship worldwide, by the way. Or give them a call at 517-372-7880. Speaking of that Murphy method style, Murphy is quite a hardliner with this getting off the page and getting off the tab thing. To what degree do you subscribe to that?
At 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't use tab. I don't learn from tab. I don't use it when I teach, especially for the kinds of students who make their way to me, which are usually retired adults, starting, like beginners. It makes it so much harder. It's just like, it's a crutch, but not just a crutch. It's like a stumbling block to have to interpret all these little dots on the page and make them come out as music. It's terribly slow. And so I 100% by ear. Now, Murphy does take a little bit of a harder line. Like, I'm teaching this guy right now. He is 80, and he loves playing the banjo.
And he's a beginner.
And he's been taking for a bunch of years now. So he is intermediate-ish, and he uses tab. Murphy won't teach him because of that. But, it's, if he likes it, but it's only because, like, there's no change in him at this age, at that late age,
Yeah.
Why I'm not going to bang my head against the wall trying to break his tab habit. But, anybody who starts with me, no way. Like, if you try and write anything down, you'll hear about it.
Interesting. So, I don't know, explain why you feel so strongly about that.
Having gotten so many students who have been trying to learn from tab, and they come to me because they're not making progress or just they're, frustrated. Like a lot of times you'll get to a plateau, students will, and then they'll try and, find something new to get them past wherever they have stalled out.
Yeah.
People who have learned from tab can't actually play any of the stuff that they've learned off of tab
Okay.
without looking at the tab, which it means they haven't actually learned it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, because I don't let them look at anything, of course, because that's my way. So I'm like, okay, play me something. And they, like, even the first song they learned out of there, but they cannot sit down and play a song out of it, And I mean, even beyond that, the fact that they can't actually use what they're learning. When you start taking in information off the page, it's like your ears turn off, right? You're playing the dots on the page, but you're not connecting. You're not actually hearing what they sound like, how they make the song.
Yeah.
So you're learning notes, maybe. You're playing notes, maybe not learning them. And yet they are not coming out as music, right? So it's not nice to listen to for, a listener to just hear all these like there's a difference in listening to somebody who is playing a tune and somebody who is playing notes lined up next to each other.
Yeah.
It doesn't hit
little soul missing to it or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So students do not make the connection that these dots equal this lick or this melody. So that doesn't work.
I tend to agree, but just to keep going with this, don't you think that there might be value in terms of preserving something that you learned, even if you learned it by ear? Like I've figured out plenty of tunes that I can't play now, and it might that I learned by ear. Maybe it would be handy for me to document it somehow. Do you even, I don't know, what's your thought process with that? Something like that.
So if you learned it by ear and have forgotten it, which I mean, I learn everything by ear, and I have forgotten a lot of what I've, especially the custom lesson stuff that I do. The recording is your reference, right? You go listen to whatever you learned it from, and it triggers how to play it, right? Basically.
Yeah.
I mean, writing it down might have been good before the advent of recorded technology, right? And, there's the thing where the written version of it is only as good as whoever was transcribing it.
Of course,
I mean, even references like the Scruggs book fall prey to typos, or having an entire measure from one song being plopped into the middle of another song that nobody catches it. And if you don't know what it sounds like in advance, then you just play right through this thing and have it not make any sense.
And especially if you're one of these people who you just referenced, who your ears are turned off and you're just playing the notes thinking it's going to sound like the thing.
Exactly.
Not completely oblivious to the fact that it really doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, these days there is no reason you can't Google up an audio reference for whatever you're playing.
Pretty much anything.
Right? Just the technology is so convenient.
Yeah.
You just punch it into whatever, and you'll be able to play it in 5 seconds.
Yeah. If you can find this podcast, you can find all the other things.
Exactly.
Cool. Are you still performing?
Not much. Since I had kids, I'm mostly just teaching.
Yeah.
Every now and then something will come up. We did have a very short-lived band about 9 or 10 years ago now with Tom Adams and Marshall Wilburn. Tom was playing guitar, and Marshall was bass, of course, and I was playing banjo, and it was called the Gooseneck Rockers.
All right.
And that was very short-lived, but very fun. So we played just a few little gigs, and David McLaughlin played on some of the gigs too.
Oh, nice.
So that was the last band situation.
For a low-key, short-lived band, that's quite a lineup.
I know, right? It's I mean, I grew up with Marshall and David, and a little less so Tom, because he lived a couple hours, up in Gettysburg. So they're just, this is so familiar to me. I sometimes forget. I mean, I don't forget that I was playing with, 3/5 of the Johnston Mountain Boys or whatever. But I guess I'm not intimidated by them so much, because they've known me since I was 2 or whatever.
That makes sense.
It's a little familial, because they're just around so much.
Yeah.
That was really, musically, that was awesome. But these days, I don't get out much. I would like to more as my kids get older, but haven't quite reached that threshold yet.
What progress have you made maybe in your own playing, I guess even since the Nashville days? How do you think that has progressed from being this Murphy Henry style player that you used to be? But what other things have you incorporated that you think make your playing unique?
So when you play really slow mostly and explain banjo over and over again for 11 years, it's really great for the polishing and the technicality of it, right? Pull-offs or, hammer-ons, like general cleanliness of playing. And I'm also super good at, that sounds like I'm making a big deal about it, but I'm not. But I've just had a lot of practice at learning people's breaks off of records, just because I teach them a lot of times note for note in the lessons. So I'm pretty fast at that. Cool. More so, I have more facility at it than I did a decade ago, just because I do it, once a week or a couple times a month, just absorb somebody else's break. So I have probably more larger variety of techniques, licks that I use that I can incorporate, and maybe I can make things sound more like I want them to sound. I mean, I'm very melody oriented as a player. Mm-hmm. Like I want to try and, play the phrasing like the singer is singing the phrasing, play the words as it were. I feel like I'm better able to do that now just because I'm probably better at technically as a player than I was.
I know this is putting you on the spot, but are you able to think of any examples recently of like a good break that closely mimics a vocal melody, or maybe a break that gave you a new lick that you were able to learn because of the fact that you're transcribing these solos?
It's going to have to be something I learned really recently because the
in and out.
The stuff that I learned for the lessons, it's people that other people request these songs. So sometimes it's stuff that I wouldn't have chosen to learn myself.
Sure.
So I think of them kind of as, I don't know, maybe like soap opera actors learning lines, right? You learn it, you nail it for the recording of it, and then never think of it again.
Yeah.
So it is in
that
and
makes
out.
Sense.
Okay, so I can regurgitate the one that I recorded 5 days ago,
okay.
4 days ago, which was Earl Scruggs' Little Maggie. So Fontaine Scruggs recorded or played Little Maggie at the live at Carnegie Hall concert. And I'm not sure if I've ever listened through to that album straight through. And Little Maggie is also one that I associate so strongly with Ralph Stanley and the Stanley Brothers. So anytime I've played it, it's been basically, kind of Ralph Stanley-ish.
More of a Ralph thing.
Not that I've learned his break note for note either, because I haven't, but just very more of that slant, to the break. So Earl's break was interesting. I'm not going to play the low break because it was very live sounding. Like the first half of his break didn't have a lot of flow to it. It was a little bit choppy. And then he kind of hit his stride in the second half of the break.
Okay.
But the high break came toward the end of the song. He was right on. And the one little thing that he did in this, which I'll just say and then I'll play it, is he played so Little Maggie, it starts in your one chord and then goes backwards to your flat seven, which is the F, here in the key of G. So I would always have moved backwards, taken this Cumberland Gap position G chord at 8 and 9 and moved it backwards too, right, to get to the F. But Earl plays it at the 10th fret right here.
Yeah.
Same note. But I never in a million years would have thought of playing that there with a melody note on the third string for whatever reason. Just, it's there.
Yeah.
Why not use it? But I never would have thought of it. So it was kind of cool. Let's see. That's the other funny thing about it is all those tag licks on the end.
Yeah.
I can just picture in my mind Lester either trying to remember the words or not being able to get to the mic.
Exactly.
Somebody's in the way.
And
if you can listen to the whole track, you can kind of hear the audience tittering a little bit. There's that kind of rustling, and you can just
They're probably hamming it up a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, you can just Earl just doing all those tags, like stringing them together like that. That's why I like the live stuff. It's like moments like that.
Yep. So I guess another question is, when the main melody note goes to that F note, how do you, listening by ear, tell that it's in that position rather than the first way that you maybe would have instinctively done it?
So it really is the two ways: the surrounding notes and the tone of the note itself. So these are the two melody notes, which in this case is playing on the second string at the 8th fret, and then the third string at the 10th fret. Mm-hmm. And then the fill-in roll that comes after it. Let's see. Yeah, so it's a forward roll. 5-3-1-5. And if you were to get that note here, you would have this note in the roll with your first string note at the 7th fret, whereas this roll has this note on the top.
Right.
Both of them are going to have the open 5th because that's the constant. So you listen to what are the accompanying notes for the chord and just find the spot on the neck, where you have the other correct notes that match it.
Makes sense, without some really goofy stretch position.
Exactly. It's playing super fast. Like wasn't anywhere near the tempo that they played it live. So, it's going to go by like in a flash. So it has to be convenient. It has to flow. So you can use all of those kind of clues to figure out where it has to be. What
tools do you use to do that? I imagine you're slowing them down, and take me through that process.
I just use the Amazing Slowdowner. Mm-hmm. There are other software things that do the same thing. And even if you're working off a YouTube video, you can slow that down pretty well. But I like the Amazing Slowdowner because you can loop it. I don't do much other than just slow it down and, kind of take it a lick at a time. Sometimes even just 4 notes at a time if it's a tricky break. If it's somebody whose playing is really familiar, like Earl's, it can go pretty quickly. Mm. Like that break that I just played, he keeps the same roll over and over again. Right. It's just like 2-2-1-5, 2-1-5. And he just moves all over the place and uses that roll over and over again.
Yeah.
So that was actually really easy. But so we'll go back to the low break, which was not easy at all. I planned to record it 1 week, but then had to put it off for another week because it just wasn't.
You knew you didn't quite have it?
Yeah, it wasn't sinking in because, let's see if I can remember it. Because the first half is so choppy and doesn't flow. That was the problem. Let's see. There were some tag licks on the end of that too. Okay. But like these first licks, like this, what follows that, that's fine. But it's not 2 pinches like I would expect. It's pinch and a 5th string. He needs his first string clear for the next note. But even this one, you would think it would be like a driving forward roll, but it's like skipping over a note and then so like the rolls aren't really connecting, they're not flowing. It took me a really long time to like, okay, what notes are there? What notes do I think should be there but aren't really there? So that all made it harder. So you just have to like peck away a note at a time.
And there's a weird philosophy about how much do you try to emulate a mistake.
Yeah.
If you think that's a mistake, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But
I feel like lots of those were unintentional.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't go so far as necessarily mistakes because they clearly kind of still play the melody of the song. Right. Just not, as smoothly
Might just
as
be missed
typical.
notes or something.
Yeah, again, the live situation, like maybe he's distracted by something, who knows what's going on at the time he's playing it. Another thing that makes it hard and that you have to watch out for is what you think it's going to be really influences what you are like figuring it out from the record. Like if like this that hammer lick, like it took me a while to realize that it wasn't a full forward roll, that it was just no second string and then the first string.
Yeah, that's some really careful listening.
Yeah, and so technique-wise, I pick out what I think it is.
Yeah.
And then I play it simultaneously with with the source. And that lets notes stick out that either I'm playing that aren't there or notes that I'm playing that are different from what's on the recording. And it'll pop out if you're playing it, at the same time.
Yeah, that can be, you said you're getting quicker at it, but that's a tedious process.
Yeah, especially on something like this. And it's also really mentally tiring. Like I can't take in very much at a time, if it's a familiar song, a phrase, yeah, easily. But something like this, I would just like take half a phrase, maybe 2 licks before my brain kind of reaches that full point and I can't put anything else into it.
Yeah, it's a lot of concentration.
Exactly.
Have you been stumped? Do your students ever bring you something either just a little too weird or a little too, outrageous for whatever reason?
I say no to a lot of things.
Okay.
I get requests for a lot of stuff that I say, no, I can't do that. Not because I couldn't actually figure it out, but my prep time is pretty limited. What with the 2 kids and the homeschooling and all that kind of stuff.
Sleeping, eating,
So if I can't have it ready to teach in about 20 minutes, I just say no. Now, I do sometimes kind of make exceptions for this Earl break or, like a JD break or something that I like to do.
Yeah.
And that, it is kind of fulfilling to my soul to learn, I'll do those even if it's, even if it takes me longer. But if it's some random rock song that has a banjo roll underneath it, I'm not going to invest a whole lot of time in that because it's not bluegrass for one thing. Some licks feel good under your fingers, right? It just you're oh yeah, this, they just feel good to play.
Yeah.
So if something doesn't feel good to me to play, I'm more likely to pass on it.
Has doing this process given you an appreciation for any certain players who you had maybe overlooked and maybe discovered just by dissecting their breaks or their style?
Yeah, actually, somebody has recently asked me for a few Bobby Thompson tunes.
Mm-hmm.
So Bobby Thompson was not anybody who I paid any attention to learning because he, leans melodic.
Yeah, highly melodic player.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've been all around my old hometown. I've searched everywhere I know, but I can't find a trace of my girl in this place. So there's nothing to do but go. I'll be riding that midnight train when it's leaving, and I'm going away to stay. Always wanted to know where that engine did go. Gonna go where it goes today. Oh, she said she'd be true till the fighting was through.
But in learning the couple of his breaks that I have learned recently, don't ask me to play them because they're in and out already. It's not a Bill Keithy melodic where it's just long strings of 16th notes necessarily. It's just kind of a different take. There's licks. It plays a lot of melody, yes, but doesn't busy it up too much with a lot of other chromatic-y stuff, maybe. It's another one of those a little bit ineffable, it kind of feels good when you play it type things.
Okay, cool.
So I definitely appreciated the couple breaks of his that I figured out, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But it's still that stuff, it's melodic, which is not really my wheelhouse. So I'm not going to take that and use it.
Yeah.
It's more of this is really cool, but not my style kind of thing.
Now, would that have been like playing he did with Jim and Jesse kind of things?
I think it was probably, at least one of them was the Jim and Jesse era. One was maybe off one of his solo albums.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm not hugely
band,
familiar either. Maybe I should check him out.
But I think that general kind of era.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned that in comparison to Murphy, you did a lot more composing. I think you said that. Maybe I'm starting to mix up what Murphy told me. But at any rate, someone in this house today told me that you do more composing. So talk about that. Talk about the process you use to write a tune, or maybe if you have an original example that you want to use to talk about how you wrote it.
Sure.
Yeah, please do so.
So Murphy writes a lot more singing songs, right? It was a song with words. She's always been a wordsmith, and has just written tons of stuff, but hasn't written that many instrumentals.
Mm-hmm. So
my writing is more from the instrumental side of it. Well, completely the instrumental side, since I've never written any songs with words. I'm not. I usually am a deadline type writer. Not so much for my first album, which is I kind of collected those tunes over the first 7 years that I played.
Mm-hmm. And that was what, about 50-50 original versus trad?
It was more toward original.
Was it? Okay.
I'm like Turkey in the Straw is on there, and Dixie Breakdown and our double banjo arrangement. But everything else I wrote, with the exception of one lullaby, which I arranged. So everything else was on there was original. Oh, Liberty.
Okay.
I also did not write. But other than that, I have tended to write just like when I need a new tune to record. Like I wrote one for the Casey and Chris album. I wrote one for the Stelling Banjo Anthology album. I wrote one for the Patuxent Banjo Project album. And then here recently, a couple years ago, I wrote a couple new tunes. At least one was inspired by getting these ugly tuners for my banjo, which if you are not familiar with them. So ugly tuners are, they're like cam tuners. So they change, the pitch of the string as you're playing, like Keith tuners do. And then there's a couple other, things that you can get to do the same thing. But these are the ones that Sonny Osborne designed and marketed. And they are fabulous. I absolutely love them.
Okay.
So I got them. And so I play all the regular tuner songs and have written actually several tuner songs, because that is one like path of thought that I frequently have when writing banjo tunes, because so much stuff has already been played banjo tune wise. So it's always a challenge to come up with something that's either a new melodic hook or a new, just something different, to distinguish what you're about to write from everything else that's already been written. So tuner songs are a little bit underexplored versus non-tuner songs. So I always try and like think, okay, what can I do that hasn't been done? How can I use this in a way that somebody hasn't already done it? So I got this set of ugly tuners, and I was like, what can I do with these specifically that could not be done with Keith tuners? Like, how can I use these in a way that is unique to these? To
those ones, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, okay, you can turn them both at the same time. Yeah. You can't do that with Keith tuners. So
that's what immediately came to my mind too. Yeah.
So that's cool, right?
Right
so I'm like, okay, so I'll try and come up with something where I do them both down at the same time, or both, different notes at the same time. And I also tend to try and lean more toward the tunings that haven't been done as much, like the Earl's Breakdown / Foggy Mountain Flint Hill Special tuning is more common, like where both notes go down. I don't even know what these are set. Where both notes are going down. So you can do that at the same time. And you get like a steel guitar kind of vibe.
Steel thing.
Yeah, pedal steel vibe. So I tend to say, oh, well, what else can I do? So I went the other direction. I tend to try and think of stuff I can do with the Randy Lynn Rag tuning, which is where the second string, The second string goes up to a C note. And so I came up with this tune where not only do I do them both at the same time, but because of the way the little levers are, so I know y'all can't see this, listening to the podcast, but so these tuners have little levers that stick out the top and bottom of your peg head, kind of near the nut, and you just reach up right there and move them with your index and thumb, of your fretting hand. So this actually means that you can move the note while you are actually rolling.
Oh, wow.
While you're fretting, while you're still fretting.
Okay.
So I came up with this tune that I'm going to have to stop and retune for, but where I tune them both at the same time and while I'm fretting still with the fretting hand and reach up and tune it while I'm rolling.
And it's in the Randy Lynn
in the Randy Lynn.
Okay,
yeah,
so
exactly.
all sorts of goofiness. All right, interesting.
Oh, it's called T-Horse Road.
I was going to ask that too.
T-Horse
Great.
Road.
And that ending does the
Flint Hill Special thing.
Flint Hill Special pattern, but with Randy Lynn. Okay,
Yeah.
that's funny.
It's a nod to that.
The little banjo inside joke there. That's
exactly.
cool. Very cool. I'm already imagining somebody who, now that they've taken your advice to learn things by ear, having to pick that one apart
Go for it.
with all the tuner changes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. So you said you're how did you put it? A deadline composer, and you mentioned the Patuxent project and the Stelling things. Were those ones that there was an expectation that you were going to write an original song, or that was just important to you for some reason to have that be an original piece?
Both of those, I had been asked to be included in the project to play something, a tune or whatever, and I just wanted to have it be an original tune, why play something that has already been recorded other places on this new project. So I just, of my own volition, wanted to come up with something original.
Yeah, cool. So once you have that deadline, where does it go from there? How do you, is there a way you generate some of these ideas, or?
Not really. I mean, sometimes I'll have part of a tune that's been around for a while that's kind of lacking a B part or some kind of conclusion. I think that was how I wrote the one for the Stelling anthology, which is called Red Mary Janes. The first half just kind of knocking around for a while. I'm like, okay, well, I got this, and at least that's a start,
Yeah.
And then I took it and added something to it. And then for the Patuxent one, so that was more recent. So I was here in Winchester, and the one that I wrote for that one was called Purple Creek. So when my son Dalton was little, he's 11 and a half now, he was really into colors. And he also he signed a lot before he started talking. So we had like different motions and signs for all the colors. But there were ones that he made up. Like, so for the color red, he pointed to his nose because Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Okay.
Also, all these signs were based on songs for somehow.
All right.
So his sign for purple was he pointed to his eye because one-horned, one-winged flying purple
One-eyed,
people eater.
one-horned, yeah.
One-eyed, one-horned flying purple people eater. Right. Yeah. So that was his sign for purple. So we were sitting him at the desk listening through to one of my lessons on the, just playing back on my computer. And I said something about the Cripple Creek lick, which he interpreted as, he heard that as purple, purple, right? So he's like all excited, pointing to his eye for purple. And I'm like, yeah, it's purple, sure. Purple Creek, that makes as much sense as anything. So so I had the title, like, I was like, that deserves a tune.
Yeah, cool.
And then my mom had come up with this silly little song. I was away teaching, I think actually at Banjo Camp North, and Dalton, who was maybe 9 months old at the time, he was scooting along on his belly, and he had like scraped his belly or something, and so I'd put a Band-Aid on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went off, and my mom made up this little song to get him to not mess with the Band-Aid on his belly, right? And it was something like, Dalton's got a Band-Aid on his belly, on his belly, on his belly. Dalton's got a Band-Aid on his belly, and he can't take it off. So I was like, well, that's really catchy. Maybe I'll just be like, can I put that on the banjo? I'm like, yeah, that lays out on the banjo really easily. So then I was like texting my mom. I was like, did you actually make that up, or is that some other song? So she thought about it, and she was like, maybe days later, got back to me. She's like, it's the old gray mare. The old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be, ain't what she...
Yeah.
So really my tune Purple Creek is based on a song that Murphy based on another song. So it's just the folk process. I guess, it gets translated through all these different layers.
Right. Then it becomes yours.
Exactly.
You haven't copied it anymore.
Yeah. Then I just put tuners in the second part, and then it's, like a banjo tune.
Yeah. Lickety split. That's cool. Let's talk about your banjo that you have here. Tell everyone. I can see mostly what it is, but yeah, describe it to everyone else and tell us the details.
So this is my Casey Henry signature model, which is with the American Made Banjo Company. It's basically a style 11. It was prior to getting this signature model. I was playing a Gibson 38 or 39 style 11 that my dad had gotten in the 70s, and he made a 5-string neck for it.
Yeah.
And he also, like, originally it was on the blue banjos, right? With a blue paint on the neck and on the resonator. But he didn't want to paint his neck blue that he had just made. So he stripped off the blue paint from the side of the resonator. So it's a brown style 11. Uh-huh. So this one also is a brown style 11. But I mean, there's nothing particularly like signature about it. Like, it's just standard, standard spacing, standard string height, standard everything. I needed it to feel basically just like my style 11 so that I could, trade back and forth and play them interchangeably. So that's basically what it is. And Robin Smith was the builder. And of course, he had passed away 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
So this is the last one that he built. Not the last banjo he built, the last Casey Henry signature model that he built.
Okay.
And I don't know whether there will be any more. Like, I don't know whether Tom Mirasola, who owns American Made Banjo Company, I don't know whether he has found another builder, is going to find another builder. It's a little still up in the air a bit.
Okay.
So there may or may not be any more of these. I did, always had one in stock to sell to my students or to whoever. So this is the last one that I haven't sold to anybody. So I'll probably hang on to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what year was your your original style 11?
38 or 39.
Okay. So, so you're in a great position to answer some pre-war versus new banjo questions, given that this is a copy of another one that you own. What do you perceive as the tonal difference between the two?
I'm terrible at describing tone. I mean, it's like, I like it. It's good.
I guess maybe the first question is, do you perceive a difference between the two, and which do you have a preference?
I feel like new instruments really take a while to break in.
Sure.
I had played, like for a while, with these Casey Henry models, I did the thing where I would buy it and then play it for a while and then sell it, like a la Ralph Stanley and the Stanley tones,
Yeah.
So I did that for a little bit, and then, but I got to like number 4, I think, and liked it, so I kept that one, and then just kept another one in stock to sell. So I played like that number 4 Casey Henry model for a dozen years or something. It was really good.
Okay.
And then then Robin died. And so I had the one I played for a long time, and then I had this one, which is the last Casey Henry model he built. And just for sentimental reasons, I could not sell the last Casey Henry model that would ever be produced, by Robin's hands. So I sold the number 4, which, and then so I started playing this one. So at that time, it was not as good as the one I sold. And so now I've been playing on it for 3 or so years, and it really has started to settle in and like, all vibrate together, whatever, an instrument does. So it's more responsive, not necessarily louder, but maybe, yes, a little bit louder. The tone is kind of more cohesive.
Okay. And how does that then compare? So that's compared to the number 4 one.
Right.
How does that then compare to the original?
My 11. So my 11's got a Huber ring in it.
Okay.
And it's been in there for quite a long time. It was from like when Steve was pretty early in his tone ring production. So maybe went in 98 or 99. So it's had a really long time to settle in. That was the biggest tone difference in that banjo. Before that, it had a Steve Ryan ring, I think. And the Huber ring made all the difference in that.
Wow.
So it's got a real, depth of tone. I think I might have told this story on the Earl Scruggs pod, the episode that you did.
I should have reminded you about. Okay, yeah. Keep going. I'm glad you brought this up, though.
So I was privileged to be able to go and pick at Earl's house 2 or 3 times after he and Louise had moved to the George and Tammy Winnett house, which is like a gated mansion. It's huge. So Larry Perkins would call up and ask if I wanted to go over to pick at Earl's, and of course the answer is yes. So I had been over there picking. I had my old style 11 because I didn't hear didn't have this one yet, and so I got it to leave, and I was carrying my banjo. I was like telling Earl bye, and he's like, you want to just leave that here? I was like, well, I'll trade you.
Yeah, right.
Alas, he did not take me up on that.
Yeah,
exactly. I did make him laugh, though, at least.
Good.
I lost my train of thought after that. Oh, but just the tone. So I love that old style 11, and apparently Earl liked how it sounded also. So that's a vote of confidence, if ever there was one,
Yeah, absolutely. What other? We've talked about your ugly tuners. Are those still in production? Is this something that people can get still?
They're currently not in production anymore.
Okay.
The tuner design and whatever name have been bought. It's Alan Tompkins from Texas. And so I've been in communication with him, like to see if he might be able to bring him back to market. And he's trying. But of course, it's expensive because inflation. So at some point, he hopes that he'll be able to get another run manufactured and get him back on the market. Right now, no.
But at least in your opinion, these are your preferred ones as opposed to the Keith style or anything like that.
Yeah, they're the most flexible. Like you can change strings. They're just always set, right? So you can throw in, the odd tuner like wherever without having to pre-plan it. You can change strings and it doesn't change the setting. And they are really easy to flip to different tunings, like the Randy Lynn Rag tuning versus, the standard one. Easy and quick to reset, whereas the Keith tuners I always have to set them at least twice. Like tune it down, set the screw, back up, set the screw, and then it comes back sharp. So you have to redo the whole thing.
There's some fudginess factor going on.
Yes, there is no fudgy factor. It is a screw, and you tighten it down to the right. It just stops there.
Yeah, sounds great.
These are fabulous.
Cool. Any other gear type stuff that you're really partial to in terms of picks or anything like that?
Yes, I'm quite partial to the gear that I use, but I'm not much of a gear head, right? I play on Dunlop .025 gauge, which is the heaviest gauge picks. But I've used the same set of picks for 20 years. They haven't worn out.
Wow.
They're a little flatter on the tips than they were when I started using them, but I haven't lost them, haven't stepped on them or anything, so they just keep on going. And I use Golden Gate thumb picks. Currently I'm using the yellow, yellow stripey. I don't know what you call this color, plastic.
Ivoroid is the technical term for that one.
Yeah, but also I have sometimes used the the white kind of pearloid pattern also. The medium size, although sometimes it's a little bit loose. So I have to try on a bunch of them, to find one that's on the small size of medium. And, I also have signature strings with the American Made Banjo Company, which are light gauge 9, 11, 13, 29. That's what I've always played on. And that's currently, it came with the bridge. It came with the one that Robin built, which is Heartland, that sunken wood or something. I don't know exactly. I changed it out to this Scorpion bridge a while ago just to see what the difference. And honestly, it wasn't that much of a difference. Okay. And I don't like messing with my banjo, so I just have never changed it back.
Just keep it on.
It's just kind of.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Presto tailpiece comes. Oh, the one thing that I'm kind of particular to is having this what do we call it? Planetary fifth string, I think. It doesn't have the peg sticking out the side.
Yeah.
I detest the kind with the peg sticking out the side. This, I think people don't like it because it's hard to change strings.
Yeah.
But I like it because you hardly have to have any wrap on the post at all, and it holds.
Okay.
You just maybe one wrap, and it holds. Those ones with the peg sticking out, it just slips all the time. I never have to turn it and turn it and turn it. Anyway, I have always played with this kind of fifth string tuner, and I love it.
Interesting. I think you might be the first person who I've heard speak out in favor of the
I know, it's so weird.
Straight fifth string.
It's such a weird thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. What's a website that people can go to check out all these lessons that you have available and whatnot?
My website is caseyhenry.net. You can also find samples of every single lesson that I have on YouTube, my YouTube channel, which is just under Casey Henry. Okay. And then I have taught several of the Murphy Method branded, instructional DVDs, and those are all at murphymethod.com.
And that's going back to, how old were you when you did the first Murphy Method?
Well, the first one the first tune that I taught was Kansas City Railroad Blues. And that was when I was in high school. Let's see, one must have been 17, 18. Mm-hmm. But my first appearance on one of the videos was when my brother and I were in the ukulele video for kids. And that was pre me playing anything. So I maybe was 12.
Oh, wow.
So that's a real time capsule.
Don't we all wish that our family videos could be published for anybody to order on the internet?
Probably not at all.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Casey. Great talking to you.
You too, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's going to do it for this interview and this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. You heard some song clips, and in order, they were Leroy and Liza by Casey and Chris and the Two Stringers, Real Women Drive Trucks by Casey Henry, Going Back to Old Virginia by Casey and Chris and the Two Stringers, The Midnight Train by Jim and Jesse McReynolds, and then Red Mary Jane's and Purple Creek, both by Casey Henry. Thank you once again to Stephen B. Register Jr. He's today's VIP Patreon supporter of the show. Head over to patreon.com/banjopodcast to become a supporter yourself. Contact the show, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it all for me. I'll see you all next time.